to order. And maybe we could do a quick round of introductions because I know a lot of us know each other, but just to sort of say what your name is, what your affiliation is, and I'll say, what is your favorite rapid transit station in Boston? So I can start. Matt Moran, work for the city of Boston, lead the transit team within the Boston Transportation Department. And I am going to have to go with JFK UMass because it's my home station. So Mayor Jen.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Grigoritis, the mayor of Melrose. I've been in office for about a year, and I'm new to this committee and really honored and excited to be here. My favorite station in Boston, I'm going to go with Charles MGH for pure nostalgia reasons. My first apartment in Boston with my then boyfriend, now husband, was 2 blocks away on West Cedar Street. We could hear the train from our bedroom.
So just going down my list, Frank, I guess you're next.
Frank Trematozzi, Mayor Koch's office in Quincy. My favorite station is Quincy Center Station, but my favorite in Boston would be North Station.
Alan.
Good morning, Alan Castelline, representing the mayor of City of Brockton. Just as a background, I retired from the MBTA a while ago and was responsible for all the schedules. So my favorite station is the entire subway operations.
Very good. David Kozis.
Oh, okay. Good morning. David Kozis from Newton. So the question is our favorite station in Boston. I guess it would be
favorite station in the MBTA system. Doesn't have to be Boston.
Okay. Well, I would say Broadway Station. Just from when I used to live in South Boston, I used it all the time, and so much change in that neighborhood.
Just going down my list, I guess Jay Monty, you're up next.
Good morning, Jay Monty, representing Mayor DiMaria for the city of Everett, and my favorite station is Boylston on the Green Line. As a lover of old things and old trains, that's sort of the last intact original station of the T, with all the junction for the tunnels down to the south end, and just kind of a unique piece of history there that I like.
You stole mine, Jay.
Sorry.
John DePriest.
Hi, John DePriest. I'm the Director of Permitting and Land Use Planning for the City of Chelsea, and I represent Fidel Malta as the City Manager. My favorite station would probably be Harvard Station because there's so much going on there.
Thanks, John. Let's see, Susan, I guess you're up next.
Yeah, hi, Susan Barrett, Transportation Manager, Town of Lexington. Well, I'm closest to Alewife Station. Actually, Harvard was going to be my pick as well. It's really more the possibilities presented by the buses and the busway of where you can get to. And David, my husband, gets off at Broadway every day. Gets off at the bus stop, or the train's there.
Very good. Amy Ingalls.
Morning, Amy Ingalls, Transportation Administrator for the town of Brookline. I think my favorite station is probably Ruggles, just with the proximity to the Southwest Corridor and the Melnia Cass Path. Love the multimodal stuff going on there, and the nice mural. But I want to give an honorable mention to Beaconsfield because it recently got heaters installed in the pedestrian shelter, which is amazing, and I live right near there. So thank you.
Very heaters. Jeez, I wish I had those at my station.
That's pretty great.
Seriously, and I'm only 2 stops away from there. Amy, thank you. Let's see, Leonard.
Thank you. I'm Leonard Diggins. I'm representing Arlington, and I'm going to go with Charles because I like that you can walk out to the end of the platform and see the river and the cars underneath. It's just a beautiful view, especially on some sunsets when you look into Cambridge. Then you can look the other direction and see all the buildings in downtown Boston. So I like that whole experience. And I had a friend who lived close by there too. It's amazing how quickly you get used to some of the subways and you just don't even hear them, or the trains. You don't even hear them after a while. That's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Len. Hannah, if you're around, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. Hannah Swilikowski, Deputy Director. I'm very biased. The Sharon Commuter Rail Station. But
On
no,
or
in
at the transit
Boston,
station, Hannah.
in Boston, I also do like the Charles MGH station. I think the view in particular when you're going from Charles MGH towards Cambridge over the bridge is always gorgeous to see.
Isabella.
Hey everyone, I'm Isabella, the budget and policy analyst at the MBTA advisory board, and I will shout out Back Bay for being so close to our office.
There you go. I'm Brian Kane. I'm the executive director. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm going to go with Bowdoin because I'm a contrarian and no one likes Bowdoin. So I like Bowdoin. And with that, Deirdre, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. Yep. I'm Deirdre Habershaw. I'm the Chief of Staff to the Chief Operating Officer here at the MBTA. So many of the stations are my favorite. I've heard a lot of shout outs for like some of the best ones. I am going to go with my home station of Ashmont. We've got a major busway, terminal to the Red Line, the Mattapan Loop, transit-oriented development, beautiful plaza. I got to go Ashmont.
Fair play. All right, Matt, back to you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Brian. So we're going to go now to the approval of minutes. I trust everyone has reviewed them thoroughly and has no edits or questions. Is that true? All right. So can I get a motion to approve?
I'll
Sorry.
I
move
guess I had
to
a question, not so much about the minutes themselves, but I am, I guess, replacing Aaron Shute, the Commissioner of Public Works, in this role, so I was not present. So I will recuse myself from the vote. Thank you.
Do you
So
want
I'll
to
move to
abstain or do you
approve.
want to not participate, Amy? Sorry, Matt.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry.
What was the question?
Do you want to recuse yourself or just abstain during the vote?
Oh, I guess that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry if I used the wrong.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Just to save us a little bit of time, we could potentially do a voice vote or a hand raise. So all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed and abstentions.
Aye. I was not there at the meeting.
So John, Mayor,
Same.
Jen, and Amy, I have as abstentions.
Just due to not being present.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. And Brian, do you want to lead us in the discussion of the 2025 charter?
Well, Matt, if you don't mind, I think if you don't mind, let's switch the order since Deirdre's here with us, Deirdre Habershaw. If that's okay with you folks, and let's sort of do that, and then we can do the charter at the end if that's okay.
Sounds like a plan.
So Deirdre, did you want to share your screen or how do you want to do this?
Yes, if I could share my screen and
Sure.
bear with me a bit because I am not a typical Zoom user. We primarily use Teams. So someone might need to walk me through. Oh, wait, share. Let's see.
All right, so Hannah's gonna unshare, for lack of a better term, and then can we make Deirdre a co-host? And then she can share her screen. I know the T is a Microsoft Teams entity. We've been with Zoom for a while. We should get used to it. Let's see. Okay, so Deirdre, let's see if we can make you, can we make you a co-host? How do I do that? Or do you want it? Oh, there it is. Way.
Look at that.
Take it away.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you. I will try to give as high level of an overview as I can. Operations is extremely vast, and it's easy to like get into the weeds on any one focus area. So the presentation that I'm about to walk you through is actually something that we've created for our internal employees. About a year ago, we started an orientation day 2, where we give folks outside of operations a little bit more of an explanation as to what operations encompasses. And so thought that might be a good starting point for this presentation. Okay. So I think many of you may know Ryan. Ryan is our current Chief Operating Officer. He is my boss. He came to us on the rapid transit side about 1.5 years ago, having worked as the Chief Railroad Officer for about 2 years on the commuter rail side. If Ryan were here, he would give you a whole overview of his professional background, starting out in rail maintenance. Ryan has worked just about every position in transportation. He's a qualified engineer who still keeps his engineer license and occasionally does operate commuter rail. He's a former dispatcher. He has worked in rail maintenance. And the reason I mention that is that he has brought a real hands-on approach and understands a lot of the different pillars within operations, which has been instrumental to us in the last 1.5 years as we've been changing a lot of practices within operations, building up our staff, and really working with all of you and other advocates to get us the resources that we need for our folks to perform their functions. And Ryan has a pretty deep understanding of what those are. Okay, so who works in operations? So this is just a very rough org chart to give you a sense of what rolls up to Ryan. So you'll see here all of the modes of transportation, bus, light rail, heavy rail, commuter rail, ferry, and paratransit all report up to Ryan, as do the maintenance functions for all vehicle maintenance, as well as much of our infrastructure maintenance. So the track department, power department, signals department, some of our laborers, all within the chief of infrastructure role. Some of you may be familiar with Doug Connett, who is our chief of infrastructure. He has been overseeing power track maintenance. He reports to Ryan. Planning and scheduling, as Alan mentioned, planning and scheduling reports to Ryan. They manage all of the rapid transit and bus schedules. They do not manage commuter rail or ferry. Those are hosted within their own divisions, but service planning covers everything else on the rapid and bus side. Rules compliance. This is a new department that we stood up about 1 year ago. When Ryan and I came into these roles, it became very quickly obvious to us that no one department was in charge of rules. We have a rules book, which is currently this lovely document, which has a lot of very important content in it. But it was essentially overseen by both our operations control center and our training school as sort of like a side hustle that they performed. We determined that we really needed to make that a permanent role with some accountability for a team to be explicitly in charge of issuing rules, reviewing rules, rule changes, and then also overseeing our rules compliance program. And then in this taller column, and this is actually where I'm going to start out the rest of the presentation, the Chief of Service Delivery, which is a position currently held by Dave Carney, is essentially all of the stuff that allows us to support the modes of transportation, right? Bus cannot provide bus service if vehicle maintenance does not meet car count or bus count. If we don't have operators in the seat in OCC, we can't function. Night operations, if we aren't able to easily transition between revenue service to maintenance period back to revenue service, the modes are up a creek for the morning. So this vertical oversees a number of functions: OCC, the training school, construction logistics, which manages all of our diversion work, the chief mechanical officer, which oversees all of fleet maintenance for all of the rapid transit modes, and then night operations. So now I'll go a little bit deeper into that. So the COO's office and the senior staff within operations that oversee all of those verticals that you saw in the previous chart, we are all predominantly based out of 45 High Street, down by Cell Station, with the exception of our maintenance folks who are in various areas. The largest maintenance areas for us being the Charlestown campus up near Sullivan Square and the Everett maintenance facility. Within the COO's office, we have a few different specific teams. Most notable, I think, to point out here, which is a new function that we also established about a year ago, is our right-of-way diversion planning and integration team. This is the team that has been working on coordinating our diversion planning, not so much the alternative service end of diversion planning, which I think several of you have likely met with or seen presentations from Laura Regal on what our alternative service plans are. But this is the team that is helping coordinate across capital and operations and also external parties to plan when we actually do rail shutdowns, how we coordinate our on-track work to ensure that we are maximizing that track access and that we are essentially effectively and efficiently expediting our capital campaign, but also ensuring that we are continuing to provide access to do ongoing and programmed maintenance. Okay, service support. So these are the items that are in the pillars that I talked a little bit about that support everything else. So vehicle maintenance. We provide support for all of the service vehicles. So bus, all of our railborne service vehicles, as well as all of our non-revenue vehicles. So our construction equipment, our supervisor vehicles. We are structured between bus maintenance, rail maintenance, and then the Everett main maintenance repair shop that I mentioned earlier. Everett is actually a very impressive operation. The number of trades that we have that work out of Everett, a number of the devices that we use on the rail lines, whether or not they're trip stops or other devices that help us provide protection to workers on the right of way, and also various keys and other manual tools are actually produced by the Everett shops. They are amazing machinists and very talented tradespeople. But vehicle maintenance makes up about 1,100 employees, and you can see, our fleet is about 1,100 buses, 1,500 non-revenue vehicles. So again, pickup trucks, other maintenance equipment, and 650 rail vehicles across all modes. Operations Control Center, currently located at 45 High Street. We have both the rail OCC and bus OCC. They occupy 2 separate floors within the building. This is where all dispatching takes place. It is a 24/7 operation. Even when we are not in service, they are dispatching our maintenance equipment and other railborne vehicles, whether or not it is test trains or construction equipment. We are organized by line. So we have our heavy rail dispatchers, our light rail dispatchers, and buses on a separate floor. They're divided by zones. Even so, within the rail dispatch, we are further divided between the lines. So there is a dedicated blue line, orange line, red line, and then we have 2 dedicated light rail dispatchers at all times, multiple supervisors on site, as well as our OIOs, which are the folks that post the T alerts and other social media postings to get information out to the public. Operations training. So the training school trains all new hires for all of the rapid transit modes for light rail, heavy rail, bus training. They also provide all of the training for right-of-way access for all employees and contractors. And they also perform a number of other functions. So they do the initial onboarding training, but they also do all of the annual recertifications for all of our employees. And they also provide other support. The training school and some of our instructors are often the pool of people that we reach to in an emergency or during diversions and other instances where we need specialized personnel to step in and sort of fortify the ranks within the transportation modes. Let's see. Operating rules compliance, talked about this a little bit. We currently have one employee, our senior director, and she is in the process of hiring two directors that will be beneath her, one working on oversight and the other one working on compliance. A lot of this work started as part of the FTA SMI, but we are essentially bringing this to a higher level than what the FTA originally required of us, and we're actually working, we're in a pilot right now to revamp our rules compliance process to more align with what the current FRA regulations are, which is the FRA 217 program. And I think over the next month or so, we'll be socializing this more, and I think we may likely at some point in the near future have a board presentation about this to better explain what we're doing in this area. Infrastructure. So engineering and maintenance. Signals, power, maintenance away. As I mentioned, they are over in Charlestown predominantly is their sort of headquarters. They do have other locations across the system that are strategically located. Obviously, we can't have all of our maintenance folks sitting in Charlestown, but they also have representation out in Wellington, Cabot, Reservoir. They're everywhere. These are the folks that are, when something goes sideways, when someone drives their car through a fence and ends up on the right of way, they are the folks that hustle out to help us restore power or restore service. I have drawn a little box here around transit facilities maintenance. They are very closely enmeshed with signals, power, and track. But when the general manager brought in Dennis Varley as our chief of stations, technically they roll up to Dennis, who reports to the general manager. So in terms of a on paper org chart, they are not part of operations. But in terms of day-to-day how we function around here, they are hand in hand with the rest of the engineering and maintenance team. We currently have about 300 maintenance away track laborers, about 175 folks within the power department, 200 within signals, and then there are 225 folks in TFM. Operations planning and scheduling and strategy. Long title. This is actually the department that I came out of before becoming Ryan's chief of staff. So as I mentioned, their primary function is designing the bus and rail schedules. We change our schedules 4 times a year. They broadly or roughly align with the seasons. As I'm sure you're all aware, our ridership is very seasonal. We provide a lot of bus service during the academic year for the public school systems. And then also, obviously, we ebb and flow quite a bit around both the higher education schedules and also, blanking on the word, tourism schedules. So like I said, we changed the schedules 4 times a year. That is actually part of the collective bargaining agreement that we give our frontline operating employees the ability to pick their schedules 4 times a year. So again, that is their primary bread and butter of the service planning department. But this department also, the bigger umbrella of OPSS, oversees our bus transformation teams. So the folks working on the bus network redesign, as well as our transit priority programs, whether or not they are signal prioritization or bus lanes, etc. Lean strategy, which is basically our process improvement team. A lot of the great work that we have seen over the last year has been built off of a lot of the in-depth work that our lean team is doing, as well as our operations analytics team. In the last 2 to 3 years, we have really come leaps and bounds in being able to utilize all of the data that we generate for ourselves really every day to better use it to inform decisions. Workforce modernization, this is a joint effort between IT and service planning. They are predominantly right now, their biggest project is working to upgrade HASTUS. HASTUS is our and actually Alan could probably speak to this much better than I can, but HASTUS is essentially the brain that lets us create schedules, monitor transportation, fatigue management. It is the brain that lets us create and then manage our schedules and our transportation workforce. That is undergoing a relaunch, and we will be actually upgrading or launching the upgrade this June. Then the alternative service planning team, which again, I think several of you have interacted with them already. This is also a new department. Coming out of the Orange Line surge of 2022, we recognized that it was really no one team's job to plan for what service would be when we had a rail shutdown. And we had sort of a knee-jerk reaction to, replicate the rail line with a caravan of buses. We recognized at the time that was not the most effective or efficient way to move people. It certainly was not the most cost effective, and it did not result in the best outcome for our riders. And so this team, we built them probably about a year and a half ago or a year ago or so. Now they're finally fully staffed and really doing amazing work. All right, let's keep going. Now we'll get into the modes. Heavy rail. So heavy rail is red, blue, and orange. There are about 650 employees within heavy rail operations. And they also oversee not just the folks who operate the trains, but control train movements within yards, who are the train starters, essentially the folks that let the trains know when they need to pull out or when they need to be making some type of adjustment, as well as all of our transportation supervisory staff. Light rail, so obviously the Green Line, but also sometimes the forgotten about Mattapan trolley. A Mattapan trolley is light rail, so for us they're considered part of the Green Line, even though the vehicles are orange and they are the extension of the Red Line. It's a puzzle. So obviously 4 branches on the Green Line and the Mattapan trolley. There's about 750 employees, including our streetcar motor persons, our rail shifters, and also we have restructured a bit, didn't mention it in here, but we now also have a dedicated job class for streetcar yard motor person. That used to be something that was picked from within the ranks of streetcar motor person. So again, 4 times a year, you would pick whether or not you were operating, as we would say, like on the road or within a yard. We have changed that in order to have some more consistency and best practices within our yards. So this gives you a little bit, this is sort of what I was referencing earlier, sort of who makes up rail operations. So, we may see, the folks that you think of automatically when you think of, red line transportation or green line transportation are the motor persons, the actual folks that you interact with in the public. But behind them and then going up our chain of command, there are a number of other folks who have very specific roles. This second row up here, this is what we would consider, or actually maybe over here, like our officials class. So sometimes you'll hear that term, we called an official. Official isn't necessarily someone's title, but it is a categorization of employee who is more senior to a motor person, who's more skilled in doing specific tasks that we can often utilize to either assist with a disabled train, to maybe hook or unhook trains on the main line should some situation have occurred, but then can also step in to operate the vehicle on behalf of the motor person should we need to pull that person out of duty for some reason. Bus. All right. So we have about 145 bus routes and 6 of the Silver Line bus routes, which I refer to them as the seed of transit priority. They are the original transit priority, original bus lanes here in Boston, the Silver Line. We have 7 bus garages where bus operators start and end their shifts. They are also co-located, obviously, with our bus vehicle maintenance teams out of those 7 bus garages. We have roughly 2,000 employees within bus who are, obviously the large predominantly are bus operators. Right, and then although I realize you are focused on the rapid transit, commuter rail is also part of operations. It's predominantly a contracted service through Keolis. We have both a north side and a south side, the major terminal being South Station and North Station for each respectively. We have about 48 MBTA employees who manage the Keolis contract, and the Keolis employees make up, our conductors, engineers, mechanics, trainers, and dispatchers. Ferry. So we finally have a director of ferry services. I think Dave's been here about a year and a half. This was amazing for us. Again, when I talk about operations tends to always have like some other side hustle. It was always commuter rail rolled up to ferry, and mostly because they were predominantly, contracted services. So in some ways they are like things, but obviously 2 vastly different modes. This is a little bit outdated. It hasn't been updated since the announcement of earlier this week about the change in splitting of the ferry routes. But at the time that this was made, we had 6 ferry routes to the South Shore and the Inter-Harbor, then the North Shore. They are predominantly seasonal, although we do have some services that are year-round. And I think, as was announced earlier this week, we're going to be starting the Lynn service about a month earlier than we have typically done in previous years. So we currently have 1 MBTA employee, being Dave Perry, who's our director of ferry. He was internal to the MBTA already before coming over to the ferry, but he holds his captain's license and has a lot of water transit experience. So I think Dave is living his best life right now. Yes. And then the ride. So the ride is our Parrot Transit Services, is overseen by Michelle Styler. Their primary office is out of Temp Park Plaza, but we do have the mobility center that is down on Mass Ave, right on the Dorchester-Roxbury line. And we also have our call center, which is up in Medford. But both of those will be relocating to 200 Newport Ave in Quincy as we look to close out those leases and bring those 2 functions under the same roof. We have 18 MBTA employees and hundreds to thousands of contractors. All of the operators who operate ride vehicles are contracted or are contractors. Okay. So I know that was a lot. I tried to get through it pretty quick. I know you have other agenda items, but I would just touch base with you, Brian, here. I think that this was sort of the level of detail you were looking for. Wasn't sure if you had any follow-up questions for me at this time.
Well, if I might, Matt and Mayor Jen, thank you, Deirdre. This was fantastic and sort of just what I had envisioned. And it's wonderful to see how much operations has evolved in the last, God Almighty, 8 years since I left. You're doing a lot more. And it's wonderful to see. When I left, I was the only person doing diversion planning and contracting. So it's wonderful to see that things have gotten better. And I'm sure Alan agrees since he left that things have gotten better as well. At least I hope Alan agrees. So what we hope to do on this committee, and this is our next agenda item, which, thank you for leaving some time, is sort of talk about how this committee can best sort of learn from you and the folks that work for you, the information that it wants to sort of understand, specifically around schedule changes, although I know that at rating changes, the schedules in rapid transit tend not to change too dramatically. Certainly a little bit less, I would imagine, than commuter rail. But this is something for the committee to discuss and understand sort of from them what they're interested in hearing more about. I will note, and you noted this as well, that the advisory board has a separate sort of commuter rail committee and a separate ferry committee, which is for those communities. It's sort of more important, integral to those communities. So we've sort of separated that out, but we understand that it works for you and for Ryan, and we have great interactions with I like to call him Commodore Perry and Mike Muller and everybody. So with that, Matt, I don't know if you would like to run questions. I just
Yeah,
hope that we
please.
can take this as an introduction and go from there.
Sure. Go ahead, Frank.
Deirdre, thank you for the presentation. Just wondering, there was a lot of information you provided. If you could share that PowerPoint presentation with Brian so he could distribute it to the committee, that would be great.
Yep, I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions?
It was, oh,
I have a
Susan.
quick question
Yeah.
on before you go. You mentioned that all facilities related to paratransit were going to move to Quincy. Does that mean that when people go for their interviews to get approved, they're going to have to go all the way down to Quincy now? And when is that change taking place?
So I don't have the exact date because we're still finalizing the floor plan for that first floor. So yes, people will have to do their interviews at the Quincy site, which is a little further south. It is immediately adjacent to the North Quincy T-stop. So the back door of our building at 200 Newport essentially is the back door of the North Quincy Rapid Transit site.
Yeah, I think the thing is the people that are going for these interviews, though, they're people that aren't taking fixed street transit.
Oh, that is fair. That is fair. Yeah, that is a fair point. Thank you. That is a good point. But there are going to be a number of advantages to folks when we move to this site. So the site that is currently at Mass Ave is really cramped. There's limited parking at Mass Ave, and also the facility is on the second floor. So we actually had an issue a few weeks ago where the elevator in the building was out. And we had to work with the landlord to try to get that elevator back up and running. And we had to cancel and reschedule about 150 folks who were going to be coming in for their assessments. When we move them to 200 Newport, the mobility center is going to be on the first floor of that building. There's also a significant amount of parking that's available at the facility at 200 Newport. And the space, the floor plan, the ability to do the course that we need folks to go through to do their assessment is going to be a significant improvement over what we're currently doing on that second floor of the Mass Ave site.
And undoubtedly, Frank and Mayor Koch will roll out the welcome wet and wet for all those folks.
We have, even though we've lost a considerable amount of tax dollars since they purchased that building.
Yes, and Quincy has been extremely accommodating. And there are a number of things that are going to move to that building in addition to the ride. So the Operations Control Center will be moving to that building. And we're going to be consolidating a lot of functions there. As I mentioned earlier, bus is on one floor, rapid transit's on another floor. Our maintenance control center is in Charlestown. We have a number of inefficiencies, like when we have an unplanned disruption, just the amount of time we waste trying to coordinate communication across those different critical functions. So like we lose time, which then also just impacts our riders and the length of any disruption. So we're really looking forward to the move of OCC to 200 Newport. So thank you to the folks in Quincy. I realize that has impacted your income there, but it's going to be a phenomenal asset for the MBTA.
Len, go ahead.
Thank you. So first I want to say that I really appreciate Ryan's attitude. The quotes that you gave from him earlier on were great. The willingness to try new things, and of course pairing that with things that that work, and his emphasis on making operations a joyful environment. It's an intangible that really it's an intangible and it's invaluable, and it does a lot towards making people loyal and also willing to they get more than just their income from their job, which is just great for us as humans, but also there's a nice balance between that and income. I could say it, I'm tempted to say more, but it come out in a crude way that could be misunderstood. But anyways, the couple of questions I have regards the rules, because you mentioned, how we are trying to kind of consolidate our roles, and you have a compliance team. And I'm wondering about what was the kind of culture in MBTA that led to the rules being in the state that they are, and whether you can see other elements of the operations, or maybe even the MBTA at large, where that culture is creating a similar problem, and maybe what challenges you are facing in trying to consolidate those rules. And then a second question is, to what extent is technology helping you improve operations? And then what can we do to support you in getting more technology if you need it? That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Those are pretty big ones, so I'll do my best in a reasonable amount of time. So I think that a few things. The rule book sort of was trying to be too many things to too many people. So if you flip through our rule book right now, and they are just sort of layered on, right? So, started in a certain state, and then an incident would occur, and then someone would say, oh, we need to change this rule. And so then that would get layered on. And then, would get new vehicles that were capable of doing something else that the ones before them couldn't. So then that got layered on. I think a few things happened over the course of time. I think that in some ways, rules became too punitive. And because they became too punitive, they were inconsistently applied. And so you may have managers who maybe didn't, someone made a mistake or made the wrong choice, and then therefore the manager didn't want to punitively discipline them. So maybe they looked the other way. But then someone else may have done the same exact thing, but they're getting punitively disciplined. And it sort of led to an inconsistency about sort of like what rules are important. It's like, so there are certain things that are currently in this book that really have no business being an operating rule. They're really things that should maybe exist in like a code of conduct, And essentially, not all rules are created equal. But this book and the culture behind this book tried to make them all equal. But in practice, they weren't, because they were not being equally applied. And so one of the things that we are trying to focus on is honestly a more just culture around rules and the opportunity to provide coachable moments to employees so that if someone violates a rule here, they have an opportunity to learn from that rule violation, and that rule violation actually gets noted somewhere. Because what would happen, there may be managers who operated that way, might pull someone aside and say like, hey, I realize you violated this. I'm not going to put you on a 3-day, but I'm going to tell you that next time you should do X, Y, Z. And that may have been the right logical choice for that manager to make in that moment. But we have no way to know how many motor persons are making that mistake every day. Like we're not, sort of to your question about technology, or data, we had no way to know. We have no leading indicators until an incident actually occurs, when someone actually gets hurt. And so we're trying to move again to more of a just culture around rules, a way to actually document these in such a way that we can learn from any trends within rule violations or issues, and then also ensure that that the rules make sense, that they are updated on a regular basis, and that those updates then feed into our training curriculum.
That was a very helpful response. I ask those questions because I like to figure out how I can apply them to other things that I do. That was like a very helpful response. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Susan?
Well, my questions were about the charter, which I understand is our next agenda item. Is that okay for me to jump to that?
So if you don't mind, can I present it first?
Okay.
And we only have about 10 minutes left, so do we want to switch over to charter at this point? Okay, great. So Deirdre, thank you again for your time today. Really, really appreciate it.
Nope. Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to hop off. It was nice to meet everyone here today. Reach out, Brian, if you need anything.
Thanks very much. Okay, so just jumping right in, hope everybody can see this. So this is something we're doing new this year for every committee. At least we're trying to sort of have a charter for the year, which is a combination of the charge of the committee, the proposed topics, and the membership. Obviously, this is your committee, not my committee or not our committee. So we want to make sure that we are being responsive to you and what you want to talk about. The sort of starting point for this, like I mentioned earlier, was commuter rail. They really want to talk about schedule changes, so we've put that in there. But if that's not something of interest to you folks, and again, rapid transit schedules don't tend to change that much, we can certainly move this around. And there's also a date that we need to fill in here. I'd asked operations if they could talk about signals and power, and they sort of said that's just too broad. We need to kind of narrow that down, and I respect that. So this is really up to you folks. I do hope that we can fit in some point, especially maybe around April, a review of the CIP from a perspective of rapid transit and bus, because something I've wanted to do for the last few years is get each individual sort of modal committee weighing in with the CIP and the operating folks on those topics. So that's something that I would hope that we can sort of do. And there's the schedule there is a little tight. So I hope we can keep that in April. If you do want to have a meeting in March, we have to kind of reschedule it. It was scheduled for a day when the MPO decided to have its big meeting, the Boston MPO, of when they're going to do its tips. So the date just won't work for a lot of folks. So we had to kind of move that one around. But otherwise, this is really This is really a work in progress. We don't have to finalize it today, but I'd like to finalize it at some point officially, Matt and Mayor Jen, and just sort of would love to hear your feedback. And if there's any other items you want to see, or if there's a better way to organize this, I'm all ears. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Matt, and thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I guess I would just put a plug in for the spring schedule changes and maybe trying to focus on bus, because I know that's an area that, as you pointed out, the rapid transit lines frequently don't change, but their schedule's too much. But at the end of the day, it would be good to hear about what the bus network is doing. And I think that would affect a lot of the communities on this call today. So that could still be helpful. But otherwise, I think this is a good schedule, and I sort of like leaving a little bit of flexibility just in case something comes up over the next few months that we want to cover. And we can slide into June or slide into one of the other months. Susan.
Thank you so much. So I have two questions about the charter. One is, where does paratransit fit in? At one point it was this committee. It's not spelled out, but I assume it's still here, but I'm just wondering, where is the opportunity to talk about paratransit? And then my other question is, and I'm just wondering, for the MBTA Advisory Board and all our various committees, where is the opportunity to be proactive? So we do a lot of reacting to things, right? The MBTA presents their budgets, we react to them. I realize that's part of what we do. Is there any opportunity for us to be proactive? And I think we have to fit that in if we do want to. I personally think we need a way better, network. We need to really rethink how we do our bus network beyond bus network redesign, as one example. But where is the opportunity for such thinking and planning?
So let me take the second one first, Susan. So yeah, I completely agree with you. The statutorily, the place for us to do that is through something called the Program for Mass Transportation, or the PMT, which by law, we, the advisory board communities, are the audience for, and we by law are the ones that the T has to sort of get this approved by. Now, MassDOT, through its, for who knows reasons, is now 2 years late getting that to us. It'll be 2 years next month, because clearly they don't want to hear from us, right? So they are now conducting some kind of a thing and an RFP, and I talked to those folks, and they're going to get something done, they claim, by next December. I'll believe it when I see it. So if that happens, that'll be next March. It'll be 3 years too late. And the reason the PMT is so important is that the capital improvement plan, or the CIP, is meant to be a derivative of the PMT. But since they refuse to follow the law, we have not had the ability to weigh in on the big picture stuff for now 8 years. And it's really, really frustrating, Susan. And I completely agree with you. And it's ridiculous. And I've talked to the GM, I've talked to the chairman of the board. They all agree it's ridiculous. This is a MassDOT issue. The disastrous 2009 so-called transformation law made this the way it is, and we have to get it changed, frankly, to really have more of a voice and weigh in. And I don't know where to put paratransit, Susan. I just don't know. And I don't know if there's enough interest to have a separate committee on it. I don't know if enough communities would want to work on that. If we think they're due, I'm happy to try to set one up. Otherwise, we can try to put it here. With that said, there's so much to talk about just in terms of bus and light rail and heavy rail. I'm not sure that this is the right place for it either. But again, I'd love to figure that out with you.
I'll email you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Len, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm very interested in paratransit. I mean, I would say if I'm having a temporary home for it here, it's possible. Let's try to do that. Susan, in general, I find that when you don't seek an opportunity, you make that opportunity. And so maybe on this board, and this advisory board, we can create some kind of proactive group that looks ahead at issues and doesn't respond, and kind of lead the T and at MassDOT to the extent we can. And finally, on the TBA, I would say maybe add service planning, on that, especially if it would involve a visit with Melissa DeLay. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Andy, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I definitely would support doing something on accessibility. I think wrapping things together with paratransit, perhaps, and accessibility together makes some logical sense. And I think definitely issues come up in Cambridge, and we have our own municipal services as well too for seniors and people with disabilities to get access to transportation that's affordable, right? That's the key issue. So whether it's accessibility or affordability, having the ride and paratransit as part of that conversation would definitely be something I would support, even just maybe within originally at the beginning and the confines of this committee, and then maybe it spins off to something else. In terms of some other charter topics that I wanted to bring up, I believe that customer technology at the T has become really well developed and is actually, one of the leading organizations in the transit kind of world nationally. And, I think subway and bus in particular are areas where they excel and also are trying to push things forward. So I would definitely suggest that as a topic. I know that at least for in my job, that's actually one of the things I hear about most of the time is like, can we get more signs, real-time signs, all this kind of stuff. And then second, I think, I would love to hear from the bus priority team as well too. I don't think that they have a lot of opportunities to talk to a little bit of a larger group, and they have a lot to share and a lot of things that they are working on. So I would love to hear a little bit more, rather than project-based, more program-based kind of information from them. So that's another suggestion for charter topics.
Thank you.
Sure, Alan.
I just want to second what Susan is saying and suggest maybe your idea, Brian, of a separate group, a committee is appropriate for paratransit. You have one for ferry, which is a small operation, much smaller than paratransit, only affects a couple of communities. Paratransit affects 60 odd communities. You could add in that maybe just general accessibility issues as well. So that's probably an appropriate form that we could establish.
Sure. And then David, and then I'll be cognizant of time. Once you're done, maybe we close it up unless there's more urgent questions. All right, David.
Yeah, just a quick question. So these seasonal schedule change meetings, so are they scheduled in a way that this committee would have some sort of opportunity to provide, like we were saying, some level of input before all the schedules are completed and ready to go? Or is it just really an opportunity to hear what's already been decided, right? It comes in context that, in Newton, we finally, for the first time, have a standing meeting every month with the folks from the T, so now we're not like caught off guard, I guess, with some of these schedule changes. We never had a chance before really to talk anything through. But I see the dates here. Is it what's being envisioned, just to let us know what's going to happen?
So the vision there, and I'm talking quickly and cognizant of time, is that incrementally they'll understand what's important to us, and then they won't make those decisions sort of 6 months to a year from now. So yes, we probably won't be able to influence what they want to do the next 2 or 3 ratings, but hopefully if they continue to hear from us what's important or what's not important, by the time they get to this sort of time next year, they won't be putting it on the table at all. That's the hope, David.
Yeah, I would totally agree with what Brian said. I think we could influence something, a rating or two down the line, but most of these rating changes are relatively small. And going back to what Susan was saying too about being proactive about the bigger picture, I think there's also a place for us to influence sort of the larger network changes that we're hoping for in the future. So I will say I have to jump to an 11 o'clock. Todd, do you want to go real quick, maybe?
Yeah, I was just going to help answer David's question. I think it's a good goal for us to have insert ourselves in the T's internal processes, but as they said, the quarterly changes are usually minor. But just to explain to everyone else, and Alan probably knows Brian as well, the T has a very detailed, very tight internal schedule that they work backwards from. So if we did want to, at some point, have, say, a recommendations in proposed quarterly changes, they'd probably have to figure out a way to work us into that very tight schedule in some way. Yeah, it's they do have a process where there's an internal meeting to go over the proposed changes. But they do everything months in advance of when it actually hits the street.
Good point.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Would you guys mind if I put a motion, or if I called for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Fantastic. And Brian will be in touch about a potential March meeting.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys. Talk to you soon.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Good meeting you.